Hello everyone, Dr. Brian Scott with you again. We're studying the signs of the end times from the book of Matthew chapter 24. This is the chapter where Jesus is speaking about end times. In verse number 3, the question is asked of him by his own disciples. They said, "Tell us, when will these things be? What will be the sign of your coming? And what will be the sign of the end of the age?" Jesus begins answering. We've already looked at his statement about deception. We've looked at his statements about wars and rumors of wars and nations against nations and kingdoms against kingdoms. Well, in verse 7, he concludes that verse by saying, "And there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. These are the beginning of sorrows." Today, I want to look with you at this issue of famines, earthquakes, and pestilences. We start off with famines. The world is standing on the brink of famines like we've never seen before. One of the research articles I read showed that 30 million people are currently suffering famine in African nations. Northeastern Nigeria, South Sudan, Somalia, and Yemen are all facing alarming levels of starvation and famine. And of the 30 million, 10 million people are on the brink of emergency famine situations. These are numbers that are hard to comprehend here in North America, but we're on the verge of famine. Now, they say with this conflict we're seeing in Russia versus the Ukraine, where Russia has invaded the Ukraine, those two nations are known as the breadbasket nations of Europe and Asia, supplying massive amounts of food products, which is going to really be suffering this year. And so we're going to see a lot of increase there in the price of goods and a great lack as well. Now let's look at some more reports. I came across a report from the UN, the United Nations, saying that the world is going to be facing famines of a biblical proportion in the next few months. They liken it to the coronavirus and the pandemic that has seen as many as 130 million people on the brink of starvation. They say that can be added to the 821 million people who are suffering food shortage and are on the brink of starvation. So when you add all these numbers together, you're close to 1 billion people, 1/7 or so of our entire population suffering famine conditions. Now, if you get into the book of Revelation, chapter 6, that's the first part of that chapter deals with the opening of the seals. And the third seal being opened is the black horse. It represents famine and death. Horrible situation. So the famines are coming, and they're going to cause a lot of problems. Tomorrow, we'll continue with earthquakes and pestilence. I'll see you then.